What do you do when the morning alarm feels like a prison sentence, and every breath seems like borrowed time from a life you no longer want to live? How do you find meaning when the world appears to be nothing more than an endless cycle of getting up, going through motions, and falling asleep to repeat it all again tomorrow? Is purpose something we stumble upon by accident, or does it hide in the most unexpected places, waiting for us to discover that sometimes the smallest acts of love can illuminate entire universes of meaning? Hello everyone. Welcome to Universal Life Stories. Today's story reveals how meaning emerges from the darkest moments of despair, often in ways we never expect. You might be walking through your own valley of emptiness right now, wondering if anything you do truly matters. This profound tale could be the light that guides you back to the sacred purpose that exists even when hope feels impossible. While listening to this story, we will discover how one person's journey through meaninglessness became a pathway to profound healing for countless others. So stay with us till the end. In a gray apartment building where the walls seemed to absorb hope itself lived a man named Thomas. At 38, he had achieved everything society told him would bring fulfillment: a successful marketing career, a comfortable salary, a downtown apartment with city views. Yet every morning, he woke feeling like he was drowning in an ocean of pointlessness. The depression had crept in so gradually that he couldn't pinpoint when breathing had become an effort, and when his reflection had started looking back at him with hollow eyes that held no trace of the dreams he once carried. Thomas had tried everything that promised to restore meaning to his existence. He had attended therapy sessions where he recited his struggles to sympathetic professionals who offered techniques that felt like bandages on wounds too deep for surface healing. He had joined gym memberships and meditation groups, purchased self-help books that promised transformation in 10 easy steps, and even dated people who seemed vibrant and alive, hoping their energy might somehow transfer to his empty vessel of a heart. But nothing seemed to touch the profound emptiness that had taken residence in his chest like a cold stone. Thomas found himself going through the motions of living while feeling completely disconnected from life itself. His work felt like pushing paper around desks to generate profits for people he didn't care about. His social interactions felt performed rather than genuine. Even simple pleasures like food or music seemed to reach him through thick glass, present but somehow muted and distant. The morning that changed everything began with Thomas seriously contemplating whether the world would be better off without his participation in it. He stood at his apartment window looking down at the street 17 floors below, not with the intention of jumping, but with a curious detachment, wondering if his absence would create even the smallest ripple in the universe, or if he would simply disappear without trace like smoke dissipating in wind. As he stood there wrestling with these dark thoughts, Thomas noticed something that pierced through his numbness like a sharp light cutting through fog. Across the street, an elderly homeless woman was sitting on the sidewalk, and despite her obvious poverty and difficult circumstances, she was sharing her meager breakfast with a stray dog that had wandered up to her makeshift shelter. The woman broke her single piece of bread in half, giving the larger portion to the dog while keeping the smaller piece for herself, her weathered face radiating a tenderness that Thomas hadn't seen in months of human interaction. Something about this simple act of compassion broke open a place in Thomas's heart that had been frozen for longer than he could remember. Here was a person who had every reason to hoard her few resources, to focus entirely on her own survival, yet she was choosing to share with a creature that could offer her nothing in return except perhaps brief companionship. In that moment, Thomas realized he was witnessing something sacred, pure love in action, uncontaminated by expectation or agenda. That evening, instead of ordering his usual takeout and eating alone while scrolling through his phone, Thomas went to a grocery store and purchased simple supplies: sandwiches, bottles of water, warm socks, and small toiletry kits. He had no grand plan or philosophical framework, just an inexplicable pull to respond to what he had witnessed that morning. The next day, he found the homeless woman in the same spot and quietly offered her one of the care packages he had assembled. The woman, who introduced herself as Rose, accepted his gift with a dignity that made Thomas understand he was receiving far more than he was giving. Rose didn't treat him like a savior or benefactor, but like a fellow human being worthy of genuine conversation. She asked about his life with the same interest she might show an old friend, and Thomas found himself sharing his struggles with depression and meaninglessness in a way he had never been able to articulate to trained therapists. Rose listened without judgment or advice, simply witnessing his pain with the same compassion she had shown the stray dog. When Thomas finished speaking, Rose was quiet for a long moment before sharing something that would fundamentally shift his understanding of purpose and meaning. She explained that she had once been a successful social worker with a home, family, and career that had made her feel important and valued by society. But when addiction and mental illness had stripped away everything she thought defined her worth, she had discovered something profound in her apparent failure. Rose had learned that meaning doesn't come from accomplishing great things or being recognized by others, but from the simple act of being present to whatever life puts in front of us with as much love as we can manage. She had found more purpose in sharing bread with a stray dog than she had ever felt in her professional achievements, because the sharing came from pure love rather than ego or expectation of reward. Over the following weeks, Thomas began returning to visit Rose regularly, and their conversations became a form of therapy more profound than any he had experienced in clinical settings. Rose taught him that depression often signals not that life is meaningless, but that we have been searching for meaning in the wrong places. She showed him how to notice small acts of beauty and kindness that happen constantly around us, but remain invisible to eyes clouded by despair. Thomas began expanding his simple practice of caring. He started volunteering at a local shelter, not because he felt obligated to help the less fortunate, but because he had discovered that the act of serving others was actually serving something in himself that had been starving for authentic connection. At the shelter, he met Maria, a single mother of 3 who was struggling to find stable housing while working 2 minimum-wage jobs. Instead of offering empty sympathy, Thomas used his marketing skills to help Maria create a professional resume and online presence that showcased her incredible organizational abilities and determination. He spent evenings teaching her basic computer skills and helping her practice interview techniques. When Maria mentioned her dream of someday starting a catering business based on her grandmother's recipes, Thomas helped her research small business loans and develop a business plan that turned her dream into actionable steps. Within 3 months, Maria had secured a better job with benefits and was saving money toward her catering venture. The transformation wasn't magical or instantaneous. It required dozens of small actions, hours of practical work, and persistent faith in possibilities that weren't immediately visible. Thomas documented every step of the process, not for credit or recognition, but because he was witnessing something profound: how specific, practical acts of service could create ripple effects that changed multiple lives in concrete, measurable ways. Through helping Maria, Thomas met her neighbor Carlos, a veteran struggling with PTSD who had lost his job due to panic attacks that made traditional employment impossible. Thomas discovered that Carlos had exceptional woodworking skills, but lacked the tools and workspace to turn his talent into income. Using his savings and network of contacts, Thomas helped Carlos set up a small workshop in a rented garage space and connected him with local interior designers who needed custom furniture pieces. The process involved Thomas spending weekends helping Carlos restore old tools, learning about different types of wood and finishing techniques, and even creating a simple website to showcase Carlos's work. Thomas found himself more energized by these Saturday mornings in the workshop than he had ever felt during his highest achieving days in corporate marketing. Carlos began receiving steady orders for custom pieces, and his income stabilized enough that he could afford both rent and the therapy sessions that were helping him process his trauma. As Thomas continued this pattern of noticing individual needs and responding with specific, practical help, he began to understand what Rose had been trying to teach him about meaning. Purpose wasn't a destination to be reached or a grand mission to be accomplished. It was a way of moving through the world with attention and compassion, responding to whatever opportunities for love presented themselves each day. The depression that had once felt like a permanent darkness began lifting, not because Thomas had solved all his problems or achieved some state of enlightenment, but because he had discovered that his life had value in direct proportion to the value he added to others' lives. Each person he helped opened up new connections to other people who needed different kinds of support, creating an ever-expanding web of meaning that gave his days structure and purpose. A year after that morning, when he had contemplated whether the world needed him, Thomas had helped 12 people make significant positive changes in their lives, and each of those people had gone on to help others in their own unique ways. Maria's catering business was thriving and employing other single mothers from the neighborhood. Carlos had trained 2 other veterans in woodworking skills and was considering expanding his workshop. Rose had moved into transitional housing and was volunteering as a peer counselor for other people experiencing homelessness. Thomas realized that meaning had been available to him all along, not in grand achievements or personal happiness, but in the simple recognition that every day offers opportunities to ease someone else's burden, to witness their struggles with compassion, and to use whatever skills and resources we possess in service of reducing suffering and increasing joy in the world. The pointlessness he had felt wasn't an accurate reflection of reality, but a symptom of disconnection from the web of relationships that give life its sacred significance. When we reconnect to that web through acts of practical love, meaning emerges naturally, not as something we create, but as something we remember was always there, waiting patiently for our attention and participation. If this story touched something within your soul, give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. When has serving others helped you find meaning in your own struggles? What small act of kindness might you offer today to someone who needs what you have to give? Your sharing might inspire someone else to take the first step toward rediscovering their purpose. Subscribe to Universal Life Stories for more healing tales that illuminate the sacred in the ordinary. Until next time, remember that meaning is not something we find, but something we create through love, one small act of service at a time.